Hello, this is Lucille Isadora Tures, and this session is called Magic in Motion. We're going to talk about how there is a magic in sacraments, rituals, and rites because of how they work in a symbolic form to communicate directly to our subconscious and our souls. These are powerful tools for getting unstuck because our conscious mind has a really limited set of resources. We're going to move into the PowerPoint, and don't forget that afterwards there'll be a Q&A that you can listen to for more in-depth discussion and to hear some answers to some common questions. Enjoy. All right, so here we go. This is Magic in Motion, the hidden power of rituals, rites, and sacraments. Rituals, rites, and sacraments are symbolism in motion. And just let that sink in for a minute because it's kind of profound. They are symbolism in motion in a literal way. Symbolism is the language of our souls. It speaks to us in ways that transcend the conscious mind and touch a deeper wisdom within. Symbolism through shape and action is a universal communication that transcends the limitations of human language. This is a cave painting that is tens of thousands of years old. It was made by many generations of people coming to the same cave for rituals. And we still find it moving and meaningful in some way. It is as if we are speaking a deep, symbolic language with ancestors that lived 30, 40, 50,000 years ago. There's something really profound about that if we sit with it for a moment. We may not be able to put words to it, but we feel a connection. We feel that this layers of handprint, it has meaning, and we have a feeling sense of that meaning. Many anthropologists believe that these images are the first sign of a human species that has started to move toward art and religion, one that engages in symbolic ritual. This is the emergence of symbolism, art, and ritual that shaped human development from that moment on. Some anthropologists actually believe that Homo sapiens outlasted and dominated the other human species because of their unique capacity and interest in symbolic and ritual life. That it actually gave them an advantage over the other forms of human race that they were competing with at the time, specifically Neanderthals. The emergence of symbols, art, music, and ritual are the signs of an emerging soul consciousness. Our connection to ritual is so deep that it defines us as human beings in some way. In modern times, we tend to think of ourselves as existing primarily in our own conscious awareness, as if the majority of who we are and how we experience the world happens within our awareness. But it's simply not true. Most of who we are, what we think, how we make decisions, is occurring in parts of our mind that we don't have easy access to. And yet we tend to identify with only those things which are in our conscious awareness when they're in our conscious awareness. And that's a really limited, myopic way of understanding ourselves. We all speak the subconscious language of symbols, whether we're aware of it or not. Ask yourself these questions. Why do we tend to think of God as being upward? For thousands of years, in varied traditions, there are stories of God in the sky. Why? Why do we associate darkness, a lack of light, with things that are evil, dangerous, and scary? Why do almost all religious rituals include fire? And this is true for thousands and thousands of years, that almost all religious rituals include fire. Here are some answers. They're one set of answers. We tend to think of God as being upward because we know on a soul level that God is a higher vibrational state. In metaphysical terms, God is literally up in vibration, up in consciousness. And so our symbolic mind, our symbolic language interprets that physically to be up in our physical space, therefore the sky. That's not an association that we made on purpose or consciously. It's an association based purely on the symbolic nature of these things. We associate darkness, i.e. lack of light, with things that are evil, dangerous, and scary because we know intuitively that the source of light is the source of life. Darkness symbolizes separation from the light, which is God. So this is another connection subconsciously in the symbolic plane between the sun, which is the source of life and warmth and light for this planet, and God. There's an overlap between the functions physically and spiritually or symbolically. The sun physically provides warmth, heat, and life. God spiritually provides warmth, heat, and life. And so we associate the two and associate God with the sunlight, and therefore absence of sunlight is absence of God. Fire also represents the light of God on earth, the source of heat and warmth, which is why we include it in rituals. It is the physical presence of God in a sanctuary, bringing a physical representation, a symbolic power of God light into the sanctuaries. When we enact rituals, we are symbolically communicating with our own souls. Sacraments are a kind of ritual that's finely tuned and designed to foster a powerful connection to God and to the spiritual reality. They harness the most potent symbols, actions, and focus energy to create the most potent form of transformational power. That's what a sacrament is. Literally, it means to make sacred. It is the transfusion of the sacred energy into daily life, something normal, something physical, something regular. Sacraments are finely tuned, which means they have been built with a sensitivity and mastery of symbols and the way energy moves, and therefore they're powerful at a level that many other rituals are not. Communion is a Christian sacrament handed down from Jesus, which has been symbolically fine-tuned for thousands of years. Every part of a mystical communion service is powerfully symbolic and communicating to our soul through our physical senses. I'm going to break that down now. I'm going to talk about some of the symbols involved in a mystical communion like our own. We can't really get into all of them because they are literally in the hundreds. But I'm going to point out some of them so that you can start to connect them and how they affect us. The candles represent the presence of God. There is an eternal flame that's always lit on the altar, which represents the eternalness of God. That flame moves from one candle to the next without interruption to represent that the presence of God is constant. It is uninterrupted. It is unending. We kneel to honor the fact that God is higher in consciousness and vibration than we are. So we put our bodies in a position in order to symbolically communicate through our body sense that we look up to God, that we acknowledge our place vibrationally in humility and love. And that helps us get in a receptive, relaxed place. We lift the cup and the bread to symbolically demonstrate the transmutation of the lower vibrational state into a higher one. We literally are lifting from one level to a higher one in order to symbolically communicate both visually and in our motor sense this shift in vibrational level. The bread represents spiritual sustenance, and the body, i.e. the lived experience of Jesus, which is transformed from a physical into a spiritual substance, as he was transformed from flesh into light. So there's multiple things here. The bread is sustenance. It represents food stuff that we are spiritually fed by the Christ consciousness. It also represents in the transmutation of the physical self of Christ on earth. So from a physical body into a body of light, from a body that was fully human in a human context to one that could and did ascend into higher vibrational states. The cup, which the wine is held, represents the feminine quality of receptivity to the blood, which is the essence of spiritual experience. So this is the holding, the vessel of holding the spiritual experience of Christ consciousness. It's a receptivity to a much more evolved, developed, radiant, expansive consciousness. The candles are arranged in a triangle to represent the movement of God into form. There are actually dozens of triangles in different configurations in the way we set up the altar. Every word of the communion service evokes the universal patterns and the metaphysical reality of this transformation. There are layers and layers of symbols which all speak to our subconscious mind and soul. This communication makes a channel for the reality of God to be communicated into our beings, and for the Spirit of God, through Jesus and Mary's grace, to transform our consciousness and our physical flesh, to literally up-level our physical vibrational state, which echoes what I talked about in the intro about following in the footsteps of Christ to develop Christ Sophia consciousness in ourselves. We would therefore need to actually transform our physical, emotional, mental beings into more light, higher vibration, in order to be able to affect the world around us, and eventually, through lifetimes of development and evolution, actually ascend. Communion is only one example of the symbolic power of ritual. Rituals are as powerful as their symbols are accurate messengers to our souls. The formation of powerful rituals requires a knowledge of symbols, metaphysics, and the human condition. Rituals, rites, and sacraments have incredible power to get us unstuck because they bypass all the conscious mind and directly communicate with our deeper states of being. You can harness the power of these forms by attending sacraments and rituals led by people who understand and engage their power, like those at our spiritual centers. That's one way to engage the power of ritual. You can also use some very simple forms of symbolic action to harness some of the power of these symbols. In this retreat, I suggest you do both. Attend a communion service, which will be offered online, and complete a guided meditation and letting go exercise that will be included in this course. It'll be separate as a guided meditation that you can listen to and follow along with. As you participate in the sacrament of communion and the guided letting go exercise, remember to relax your mind. Focus on your heart and the subtle sensations of your spirit. The more relaxed and receptive you are, the more aware you will be of the shifts in your being. One of the differences between doing a ritual on your own, which can be very simple, symbolic action, and participating in something like a sacrament with highly conscious ministers, priests, and teachers, is that when you do the ritual on your own, its power is relying completely on your consciousness and your capacity. So how much you invest in it, how completely you relax into it, how much you infuse it with emotional energy and consciousness will be exactly how powerful it is. While when you attend a ritual or sacrament that is led by and held by a conscious teacher, that energy will happen whether you actively participate or you don't. You will be affected. Now, that effect is maximized by your conscious participation and your openness. But the power of it is not determined by your ability to move energy, your ability to hold a conscious state, or your emotional mental investment. That's why we do it that way. That's why we have people who can hold that energy consistently lead these things. And also, it's something that we recommend our apprentices attend regularly because we are not always in a place where we can commit the mental, emotional energy to actually make something powerful. But you can always show up and relax. And just by showing up and relaxing, you are affected by the sacrament again and again and again, every day or several times a week. And that is building up a shift in vibrational consciousness in your being that you have to do almost no work to achieve. And that is the incredible grace of sacraments. But in this retreat, I want you to feel both. And the simple ritual can be quite powerful if all the pieces are in the right places. If you invest in it and you show up with your heart and you use your mind and will to make a sacred space, then it can be quite profound. It can also be completely empty. It's kind of on you. So invest as best you can, give it your full attention and care, and see how it feels. For more advanced training in meditation, spiritual healing, and personal transformation, contact us about spiritual apprenticeship programs, because that's where you get the full training on how to actively engage the power of rites and rituals, as well as practice and hone meditation skills, and the way to make a consciousness space that's powerful for ritual rites and sacramental forms, and really a step-by-step transformational process that you're brought into. thanks for joining us, and blessings on your process of transformation and growth, and also in the experience of engaging with sacraments, rites, and rituals in this retreat.